Neither side is blinking in Turkey. The ruling AK party continues to answer a widening graft and corruption probe with dismissals and transfers of prosecutors, judges, and police. 350 reassigned Monday overnight, bringing the total to 1,800 since the case went public. That's according to one newspaper. After dismissals, one senior member of the AK party vowing that prosecutions will follow against what Erdogan's allies are calling a coup against democracy. And yet, the indictments, the arrests, are continuing, more or less unabated. It's not just the sons of 3 government ministers who've since resigned. There's heavy hitters in finance, construction, transport. Is Erdogan's old boys network coming undone, which would explain his sharp rhetoric? Or is he right in asserting that there is a plot orchestrated by his friend-turned-foe, US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen, with whom open warfare includes the plan to shut the popular private schools that the cleric runs? The crisis certainly starting to take its toll, with the lira tumbling against foreign currencies and the stock market dropping 8% in the past 3 weeks. Today, in the France 24 debate, Erdogan strikes back. With us to talk about it from London, author and academic Zia Maral. Thank you for being with us again here in the debate. We're also joined by Emre Demir, editor of Zaman's French edition, or should we call it Zaman France?
Zaman France.
Zaman France, there you go. Benjamin Bruce of the French Political Science Institute Sciences Po. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And we'll also be joined shortly by Bahadir Kaliagasi of the Turkish Business and Industry Organization Tuziad, the France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Let's first, though, go to Istanbul and join correspondent Patrick Rowan. Patrick, talk about an irresistible object meeting an immovable force, each day bringing its surprises. What's the latest?
Yes, for many Turks here, there's still a real sense of dread and foreboding as this power struggle unfolds. Today, the Justice Minister, Bekir Bozdağ, who is loyal to Erdogan, forbade any investigation of the Istanbul police chief. Now, this effectively overrules the Supreme Board of Prosecutors and Judges. And the government is likewise now proposing a law that would give it more power in the very selection of these prosecutors and judges. Now, police chiefs of 16 provinces have been removed, along with the most senior official yet, the National Deputy Police Chief. The allegations and the counter-allegations and the murky politics are frankly dizzying.
Allegations, counter-allegations. Who would you say among those indicted, because we've sort of lost track now, because while the reassignments have been going on, so have the indictments. Who are the biggest heavy hitters among those the people who've been indicted?
Well, there are several people that were involved in the higher levels of the Izmir municipal government. When they were removed, there was apparently a snafu in the arrests. As the arrests came in yesterday and this morning, early this morning, some of those who were arrested were somehow freed moments or hours later without the authority of the central government. And so it seems as though this is a spite check on the part of those who were arrested in the Izmir city government. But all indications really point to, a vicious power struggle that shows no signs of abating. Erdogan is fighting this tactic. He's using the same tactic as he used in the Gezi Park protests last summer, painting the Gülenists as stooges who are backed by foreign powers who want to undermine Turkey. Now, this is a much tougher sell than it was against the westernized middle and upper classes who were the majority of the Gezi Park protests. This is far more dangerous to Erdogan than the Gezi Park protests were. And the most important thing probably today is that if this proposal to give the government more power in the selection of judges comes to pass, which is far from certain, of course, but the very proposal of this says that we do not want an independent judiciary. We want to make Turkey more monolithic, and unfortunately that would make it less stable as well.
All right, I want to thank you for that, Patrick Rowan, for joining us from Istanbul. Gosh, a lot to talk about there. let me start with, first of all, the Turkish press, which has been going at it with gusto. The front page of Emre's newspaper, today's Zaman, reporting, again, on the probe into those who are probing. And that just shows you where we're at this particular point. Let's pick up with the last point that our correspondent said. Will granting new powers to the Justice Ministry, will that pass Parliament?
Maybe it will pass the Parliament, but I think that the legal changes, the proposition of legal changes which made by the government is clearly anti-constitutional, and I think that the Constitutional Code will annihilate, won't accept these changes actually. So I'm not sure for the Parliament, but for the Constitutional Court, it's highly probable that it will be rejected.
Zia Moral, do you agree?
Sorry, I haven't really seen the news report that you're alluding to, but some of the changes which the AKP has pushed since the start of the investigations in December 17 has already been challenged within the judicial system in the country, not even reaching to the Constitutional Court level yet. So some of them are indeed legally very dubious.
All right, and then the second point, I'll put this to you, Zia. Our correspondent there, Patrick Rowan, talking about a power struggle. And for our viewers watching, it's a power struggle between who? Is it Erdogan and an independent judiciary? Or is it Erdogan and, as he puts it, those who are Gulenists?
Perhaps the option C, perhaps a much more complicated picture, and perhaps all of them are true at the same time. At its face value, it is clear that the Gülen movement and the AKP are witnessing a really intensified clash over influence and place and power, as we can translate it into. But it is also very likely that there is a long tradition of judiciary and members in the police force that have been waiting for a moment for a weakened AKP that actually they can bring their cards against the party, remnants of the old tutelage in the country or the old power structures. Some of these clashes are not really clear to us as outsiders, are only really fully known by those in the know within the state structures. But whatever it is very clear that Prime Minister Erdogan and the AKP government is facing its biggest challenge to date in terms of the party's own political future and place in the government.
Benjamin Bruce, let me ask you, this is a fight between who and who?
I think I'll have to go with option C as well. I think one of the most difficult things with this whole debate right now, with this whole issue, is trying to reduce it to just two actors. So there's been a lot of news reports talking about Erdogan and only Erdogan. This is on the one hand because he has such a intensified personal style, but behind Erdogan is not only the very numerous hundreds of AKP members, of which some have defected, maybe others will follow, but there's still a large majority that supports him. But there are also supporters, millions of Turks, but not only that, but members of the Gülen community and Gülen movement who don't see any other alternative at the moment. So Erdogan supporters, on the one hand, are very mixed, but on the other hand, the people who are going up against the system that's been erected around him cannot be all part of one movement. So they can't all just be following directions of Fethullah Gülen. If we're already so surprised that Erdogan can't control the entire state, how can we imagine that Fethullah Gülen can give one order and control millions of people across Turkey and across the world? So both are somewhat exaggerated, in my opinion.
Both somewhat exaggerated.
And we have to add that Erdogan not only accuses the Gülen movement, but he's calling this investigation as an international plot against the government. He accuses openly United States, Israel, Germany, Vatican, and they are the external enemies. There are some internal enemies, starting with the Gülen movement and the Gezi protesters and TÜSİAD and the opposition parties. All of them are the traitors of the country, and they work for some dark international forces. So it's becoming more ridiculous than the Gülen movement. So I think that he chose this time the Gülen movement as a scapegoat. So I don't think that this thesis is very credible.
All right, the Turkish Prime Minister who set the tone from the outset with sharp words to blast, as you were saying, what he labels a plot and a smear campaign.
I have to say that unfortunately there is a gang within the state that is about to become a criminal organization.
All right, and we can go now to Brussels and join Bahadir Kaliagasi of the Turkish Business and Industry Organization TÜSİAD. Thank you for joining us again here on the France 24 debate. How do you explain the very sharp rhetoric on the part of Turkey's prime minister from the outset?
Well, in domestic politics, statistically, it's always possible to have downs like that. The political stability is, of course, something that the business cherishes, but especially in periods of dense elections like the one we will have now in the 2014, the politics have been heating up very sharply. We were not used to that, of course, because Turkey has been going through a certain political stability in the last decade and quite successful macroeconomic discipline on everything, from the budget deficit to the public debt. However, now we are going to a very interesting period. We will have elections, 2 elections at least this year, and may eventually another one in 2015. So we need political stability and certainly government as well. This is why we hope that this period will end quite soon. The explanation is very difficult. The politics and the political psychology, it's always a very shaky analytical business. However, we really believe that Turkey has the strength to go beyond the current turmoil, maybe with strength institutions, starting with the impartiality and independence of the judiciary power. This is very essential. And also the management of the macroeconomy of Turkey. The Turkish Central Bank has been intervening to the markets quite massively in the last weeks to make sure that the Turkish lira has a certain predictability and stability, interest rates as well. We have important targets to meet by the end of this year, like the growth of 4%, inflation rate of maybe 6%, and reducing the current account deficit, another big problem. So while we have all these main important tasks to keep the Turkish economy dynamic and entrepreneurial, probably the politicians now also have to think twice before triggering more crisis.
But Bahadir, let me ask you, you're right. On the one hand, there's the amazing growth that we've seen in Turkey over the past decade, and no one's refuting that. But what this graph probe has highlighted is a lot of issues about the construction sector, about the finance sector, about tenders bids awarded without a tender. Do you feel as though Erdogan has something of an old boys network that's coming undone?
Well, we cannot really summarize all the Turkish economy to cases, actual cases of corruption or allegations. It will be unfair. But this is not to say that these cases are serious. They are very serious. They have to be handled to maintain the public confidence and the business confidence on the way this country has been running. And there is no doubt that there are important deficits in the system, very significant deficits. However, when you take the Turkish financial system, Turkish banks, private banks, their international links, their joint ventures with the international banks, or the construction sector in Turkey or elsewhere, we are not certainly in an overall corrupted system. Nevertheless, the transparency of the political system, the public procurement issues, state aid concerns, regional development policies, these are all part of a new era that Turkey should build, and the actual government, while it is in power, should build from the ashes of the last week's crisis. So the task is there, but we should not exaggerate. We should not undermine it neither. We have to measure it very well, and we have to. The diagnosis is very important.
Okay, so
there are very specific reasons for which.
We shouldn't exaggerate. Emre Demir, let me ask you. Erdogan's sharp rhetoric, is it because this is hurting very close to home?
Well, actually, it's not it's obvious that there is some rift. There is an open rift between the Gülen movement and the AKP since 2011. Between 2002 and 2011.
But when you see the people who've been targeted,
yeah.
In this probe, some of them very close to Erdogan, in the construction industry, in the financial services.
Well, if I think that if the allegations are serious, if there is some evidence, then you should target. You can't look at if he's close to Erdogan or not. So I don't think that is a criteria. But this political rift, this political war declared by unilaterally declared by Erdogan is becoming a very very risky situation for Turkey, and it has become a state crisis because Erdogan is now trying to control the judiciary system, and it's far more dangerous for the Turkish economy. And if there is a real danger, I think that the most important thing for Erdogan is to make a new constitution, to make a state more accountable, more transparent.
All right, we have a comment from a viewer on Twitter. Erdogan is acting like a dictator, trying to cover up corruption among his closest associates and political partners. Zia Moral, what's your reading?
It clearly does not look good at all. We've seen more than 1,400 or so police officers being shuffled around the country right after the start of this investigation. We have seen prosecutors are looking into the corruption cases being limited in their scope of investigation and what they can do, and legislations that quickly changed. Yet at the same time, I think everything, again, just like your other guest has rightfully mentioned, everything comes down to this mythical construction of Sultan Erdogan, if you like. He somehow is claimed to have absolute powers. He's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, he's omniscient. He's not. His executive powers and his possibilities are actually limited, and we are pretty much seeing the extent of them. This is how far it can go. The current polarization of the Turkish society, and sadly, a perception which is really symbolic of problems in Turkey that doesn't just only belong to AKP, but it also belongs to Gülen movement, also belongs to liberals and leftists and nationalists and conservatives in Turkey, is the sense that rule of law is often only used as a trump card when it touches us against the other person, or when it touches the other person that we want to see crumble. For example, this week, a Turkish court gave a decision that the murder of more than 30 Kurdish young people on the borders by Turkish jets was not a legal concern, or there was no crime there committed, which then again, there wasn't any white cry on the rule of law on that issue because it happened to be the Kurdish young people smuggling into Turkey. So the problem here that we are witnessing is an ongoing problem in Turkish politics. Sadly, the conversation on rule of law has become a football game where everybody's cheering for their own team and their entitlements. And AKP has failed on this front, but so has the other actors in the arena.
All right, and that brings us to the heart of the Turkish model and democracy. We'll be picking up on it when we come back from the break. Just before we go, this tweet from one listener who backs Erdogan. It is a clash between an elected government and a group who wants a say in everything without taking any responsibility. Stay with us. More to come here on the France 24 debate.
For the last 11 years, the AKP has done a lot for this country, for its economy and development. The party's done what no one else has been able to do.
Who to believe? Who speaks the truth? We still don't know who we can trust. There are huge levels of corruption here. That's a really big problem.
These people we elected have had the time to reap the benefits of corruption. When they leave, others will do the same.